I spent the first decade of my life in the corporate world. Then I worked in creative services for the next chapter of my life. And 12 years ago, I joined the Rotman School along with Roger Martin. He inspired me to come in and build out the design initiative here at Rotman. And throughout the last 12 years, my passion has really been two things. One is helping in any way I can, like my colleagues, to set the students up to go out in the world and have the courage and competence to lead change and positive impact, and at the same time working with large organizations to help them really work through the gnarly parts of innovation and trying to make a transformational change in an organization. So where the insights that I'm going to share with you and that are in my article come from working with organizations that are really battling this on a very pragmatic level. And I'm just about to publish the second edition of my book, which is really focusing on the enterprise as a whole and the people within that. So let's start with innovation. Big word. We all know that that's what we need to survive. I'm hearing more and more from CEOs these days that it's not a stream of activity, it's the core of the business. We have to move the whole organization and prepare for the disruption that's on the horizon, as Anita has pointed out. So that means you need new ideas and you need to carve out your unique place in the in order to be sustainable in the future. But that's not so easy. I hear lots of comments from people all over the world about we have to innovate. However, we can't afford to outsource. The changes we're making are incremental. We don't really know how to drive growth in a significant way. We're spending a lot of money. Are we spending it on the right things? And then the big question that a lot of very senior people ask is, are we even ready for this, what's on the horizon? So in the process of moving through exploration, we've become quite good at generating ideas. I think everybody has been hearing about design thinking and the activity out there where people are becoming more good at a generative level of coming up with new insights and new ideas. But as you go through this trial and error period, which is quite natural, there's a point in the process, you reach an inflection point, strategic inflection point, which you have to lock down and you have to design a strategy to scale, because you can't just keep trying stuff out forever. And the strategy part is very much missing from a lot of innovation efforts. So there's three popular approaches that organizations around the world are taking to tackle this innovation quest. One is outsourcing, another one is design thinking, and labs. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those and some of the things that can go wrong, but more importantly, how to make them go right. First, outsourcing. This was the craze about 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Corporations, especially in the U.S., were spending tens of millions of dollars giving it to the experts. Sometimes you just don't have the bandwidth. You need someone on the outside to kind of break the paradigm and bring you new ideas. The problem is these very expensive ideas sometimes hit the wall. They don't plug back into your operations, and nobody knows what to do with the ideas. While they're inspiring at the time, and you know that's where you've got to go, they just don't fit back in. Problem is all that inspiration can become a sunk cost. And when I hear from all my consulting friends around the world saying, great idea, but the client didn't know how to execute it, so it just went to the shelf. That's really a sunk cost. So in order to better manage that, in the better relationships, it's a total co-creation process. You've got smart people in an organization. They need to work with the external experts to bring that together. And the people on the inside have the know-how on how to actually make those things happen and how to overcome barriers and how to break through that. So a total co-creation process is really the only way to tap into outside experts, or you might just end up with something that doesn't plug back in. The other hot topic is design thinking. So over the years, this has become bigger and bigger. It is absolutely a big craze. It's kind of my nemesis because while it can provide a lot of fresh thinking, if it's done design light, it's only going to create lots and lots of ideas that eventually are going to have no place to go. A lot of companies that I have dealt with, they call me in to do what we call at Rotman the third gear, which is the business strategy and the business design part. They say, we keep generating all these ideas, we don't know what to do with them because they don't plug back in. Design thinking, if done in a light way, can give you the ideas, but they might not integrate back into your strategy. They don't integrate back into your systems and the way you work, and then they hit the wall. And then when they hit the wall, the people who are trying to run the business say, all that design thinking is fluff. So if you're going to do design thinking right, you got to really take it seriously. A company like Procter & Gamble, 12 years ago when we started DesignWorks, we had the amazing privilege of working with this company on a global level to say, how could we take this and go deep into the organization and do a couple of things. Integrate it into the strategy of the company. It's a part of the way Procter & Gamble thinks about their business. And secondly, to make it more inclusive and integrate it into the organization. They had 350 facilitators at the end of the year that would go out to the world and weave this into the everyday ways of working and solving problems. So integrating it into strategy and operations is the only way to take design thinking seriously. Labs, another great idea. They're popping up everywhere, hundreds of them. And they're great because you get these dedicated experts that can take the time to focus on what's on the horizon. What is it that we have to do in order to be disruptive and survive the long haul? The problem can be that sometimes these labs operate in isolation. They're not aligned to a business unit or a corporate strategy. They're coming up with ideas, and the question becomes over time, is there really a return on investment? The number of people that I have talked to that are senior executives in global companies who say, I don't know what they do in there. That's not a good thing when nobody knows what's going on in the lab. And so, like the other things, if you do these in a way that's quite in a silo, and it's not inclusive, and it's not connected to the corporate strategy, you're going to end up seeing a lot of closures. And there's been an alarming rate of closures of labs. Some are doing really well, but some get shut down. So it's a long-term pursuit that has to be very carefully thought through from the very beginning. An example of a lab that's done quite well, Fidelity Labs in the U.S., which has a couple of our graduates working in it. And one of the stories that's in my upcoming book is about Fidelity Labs and how effective that organization is at integrating with the rest of their enterprise. As an example, there's a story in my book about how they picked up a signal that even though they're in the asset management business, investments, they realized that people were really totally struggling with student loans. That includes a few people that kind of graduate from here or any other big university. You carry it with you for your life. And so they said, we can't ignore this any longer. So they started on a strategy to listen to more stories and think about how could we, Fidelity, help those people. And as they moved through this, they took it into town halls, they engaged their employees, and it has now actually been a very important part of a slight pivot and an enhancement to their portfolio to bring student loans into the way they help their clients. So here's a few considerations that are in the article, and frankly, I could talk for an hour on each one of these, but I want to just touch on engaging the right people, building a business case, and conditions for success. Engaging the right people means tapping into the people inside the enterprise who have the know-how and insights to make stuff happen, giving them ownership and allowing them to help figure it out. The second is to build ownership through stakeholder engagement and broad stakeholder engagement. And we've been a couple of references to this. That means involving maybe all your employees in the organization. That means maybe external. We worked on a project with the Canadian Bar Association. We had 2,700 lawyers weighing in on the strategic direction of the Canadian Bar Association. But we had to do that because engagement and buy-in was really important. Plus, it also helps to build a better case in the end. And last, if you are going to start up a lab, which is not unusual these days, to make sure that it becomes a force of integration and propagation of big ideas and insights that really helps the organization versus becoming what I call a trophy lab. Building a business case. Some say that creativity is for people who don't like numbers and design thinking is just a bunch of sticky notes, but you know what? In business, you need hard, cold facts. So when you run the experiments, it's not just winging it, as some of my clients say. It's like doing a measured experiment and then using that data and very rigorous data gathering throughout the process to build a case, because ideas could be powerful, but decision makers are also quite compelled by solid facts that give you a reason to believe. Not proof, but a reason to believe. And last, design a strategy to scale big ideas. and align that with the rest of the corporation. And the last area is creating conditions for success. This is very important, to start with an ideology. What is it we believe in as an organization, and do we have the capabilities to deliver on that? Being customer obsessed, being collaborative, being experimental, to be explicit about your ideology and build the capabilities to be able to deliver on that. The second, and this is really the deal breaker, is the systems and the procedures and the structures within the organization. A lot of times there's a big idea and it hits the wall because it just doesn't plug into the system. So when you have big ideas, you have to rethink the entire structure sometimes of your company and start to migrate toward new ways of working. And then last, leadership at all levels. It's not a top-down way of working these days, and we certainly see from our students, these amazing students that are totally jazzed about going out and making an impact in the world. And they have the energy, and it's their future. So I always say, toss the baton to the new generation. So 5 things to keep in mind, and there's a lot to take in, is that this is hard. This is hard work, and it takes years to do, turning ideas, big ideas into business. You gotta make the business decisions and manage it, your innovation process like any other stream of business, thinking about your investment. It takes an enterprise to deliver. This is not up to a chosen few, department, one guy at the top, or one gal over here. This is about moving an entire organization down a path that's going to involve a lot of change, and it's going to be tough. And it takes time, but you've got to celebrate all the wins along the way, and then in the long term, really celebrate in your shared success. The last point is to assess your enterprise readiness. By that I mean stopping to think about the whole organization. What's our ambition? What do we want to look like as a company or an organization? Could be public or private. What do we want to look like down the road? How are we going to deliver ongoing value to our customer? All of that in a sort of a simple way is going to be wrapped up in your enterprise strategy. But in order to get there, you're going to have to change the way you work in many cases. You're going to have to find new ways of structuring yourself and thinking and approaching problem solving. And with that, you've got to put the management systems in place that are going to support that so that people get rewarded for that kind of effort and that they don't come up with ideas that hit the wall. And by changing the way you work, changing your systems, changing your structures, what you do is you start to shape a new culture. When leaders say, go in and I'm going to change the culture of my company, you don't do that by a bunch of speeches and lunch and learns and inspiration sessions. You do that by fundamentally changing the behaviors, ideology, and the support systems that you put in place to nurture that kind of cultural shift over time. So that's just a practical look at how hard this really is and what kind of effort that it takes. And I think among all of us, it was a kind of a nice cocktail of ideas. Thank you.